Well, we all manifest ourselves in a variety of ways, and today we celebrate the great feast of the Epiphany. That word Epiphany comes from the Greek word manifestation. And we typically use that word when we have had a kind of understanding of something or a change of heart. You know, we'll say, I never used to like doing that, but then I had an epiphany. Something came to me. It was revealed to me, and now I understand. And we use it in that way. Well, we celebrate this feast today, but it is really a year-long celebration. Because throughout this year in the Scriptures, the liturgy and our world will see Jesus manifest as God to us. Now, I know we're just 2 weeks past Christmas, and the rest of the world has moved on. The malls are already decorated for Valentine's Day. Have you noticed that? Trees are out on the curb, and I got the last of the dark chocolate Santas at CVS on Friday. The celebrations and the feasting excesses are over. Well, they will be over after this weekend. CNN reported this week that health clubs and Weight Watchers have seen the record highest number of new memberships ever this year. And it's no surprise. We're ready to begin a new chapter. My mother used to say, when the needles are falling off the tree, the party's over. But today, the Feast of the Epiphany keeps us focused. It doesn't let us move on that easily. Today, that feast keeps us at the manger. And in most parishes, now they have placed the images of the Magi. We don't have them in our set, but we can imagine what they would look like. The Magi have arrived, but the question still hangs in the air 20 centuries later. Where is the newborn king? Where is he? It's their question, and it's our question. And as we hear that question proclaimed in our church today, our eyes might easily drift over to this manger scene. And we might be tempted to answer, there he is, in that lovely, beautiful, peaceful setting with those calm-looking parents, those adoring shepherds, and a few lovely, well-behaved animals. That scene might calm our frazzled nerves today as we gaze on it. But as the saying goes, we have to get real. What life looks like this? We try to have our lives look like this, and when they don't match up to this, we think there's something wrong. But most of us are thankful that God took flesh as Jesus. And he's not some Norman Rockwell painting that we can't ever attain. The child that we honor today, that the Magi come to witness, that child was not born into calm and peace and restfulness and everything that we desire in our lives. Think about it. Jesus was born into a world of anxiety and tension and conflict, and he lived his life in that. You know, we think we're alone in that, but we know from our experience that we are not. And from the experience of Jesus, we are consoled that we're not alone. This weekend we heard a multitude of stories from individuals whose lives have been turned upside down over this past year. And yet, they somehow navigated through that conflict, and they are here today. But today, the gospel shows us also how uneasy our world is. But think about the message in the gospel, and think about Herod. He's frightened. He is a leader He's supposed to have power. But what's happening? He hears there's a king of the Jews, and he inside is churning. And he tries to trick the Magi. He says, tell me when you find him so I can go and pay him homage too. Right? But he's scared inside that his power will somehow be taken away. So we who often feel powerless in our lives can see that this has been a part of history. The desire to somehow have control. And we should know by now in our lives that will never happen. In our struggle, though, we sometimes feel isolated. We feel insignificant. And the manifestation of Christ in the Epiphany is meant to calm those fears, to bring us out of isolation, to make us feel that we are something rather than nothing. It's interesting, too, that the religious leaders are asked, where is this king? And they don't know where he is, or they don't admit it. Because from the scriptures, they should have known that he would have been born in David's city. But I think they were afraid to admit that he would actually be born in a place less than them. And that kind of connects with us too. When we look for God, we look up. We say, God must be somewhere higher than we are, instead of looking around. And as one person said this morning, finding God in everything and everyone. We need Christ, whom we see, whom the Magi saw, in the Eucharist, in his word, and in the sacrament. We know that. We believe that. But we're also guided to meet him in one another. And in the moments of conflict and sadness, in the moments of uncertainty that we face. I know it's hard to see him there, but he is there. You know, I used to be bothered when people would say, try to see God in this. And I would say, that is a bunch of baloney. How can I see God in this? Something that was so distressful in my life. But I understand what they mean now. That in the midst of whatever it is that has shaken our lives, God is working. God is a thread that holds us, that pulls us somehow together through that unseen territory that we fear. God is present. Those people had wisdom. They weren't just giving us a line. God is present in everything that we experience, both joyful and stressful. All our lives we have come looking for the Christ child. We have come looking for that peace. And we can only be aware of God's presence when we are jogged out of our complacency, when we actually enter into the journey. I have a favorite poem. I'm sure you've heard it. It's by T.S. Eliot. It's The Journey of the Magi. I'm sure you've at some point read it, and I really bid you go home today and get online. It's a beautiful poem and so meaningful. But he begins the poem like this. A cold coming we had of it, just the worst time of the year for a journey, and such a long journey. Finding Christ is not easy. It's a hard and long journey, and sometimes it takes a lifetime. Eliot's poem, I think, rings for us so true because he depicts the questions that arise in our heart all through our lifetime. Where is God? How can I experience more of the peace of God that I know is there for me? Interestingly, at the end of the Gospel, the Magi, and we're kind of to put ourselves in their place, it says they found Jesus, and then they returned to their home by another way. Once they had experienced the power of God in their lives, things were changed so drastically They couldn't go back to the same way of living. And that's the image in the gospel. They returned another way. As we leave retreat this weekend, I hope that some of that is present in us. That we will have the courage to make the changes we've thought about this weekend. The courage to make the changes that for years we've been wanting to make, but have never been able to make. And maybe that change is simply hoping more in the power of God. The Magi found Christ, and they fell on their knees. They bowed before him in homage. But on that holy night, they also allowed Christ to become their way of life. May we too find the manifestation of God in our lives and hold it close to our heart, but also share it with the world as the shining light they so desperately